information about Antifa. Fox News is reporting, quote, in previously unreported documents dating back to April 2016 and viewed by Fox News, the FBI and Department of Homeland Security wrote that, quote, anarchist, extremist, and Antifa groups were the primary instigators of violence at public rallies. Joining us now with a reaction is Fox News contributor DeRoy Murdoch and Democratic pollster and Fox News contributor Doug Schoen. All right, DeRoy, you know, what's interesting is that for decades we've been hearing about, the alt-right, the most likely to be the instigators of violence, and yet now we hear the FBI, Homeland Security have been talking about Antifa, talking about them using weapon shields, beating, Molotov cocktails, fires, smashing, and I haven't heard about this. Have you?
Not much until recently, but these people have been very active. I mean, you go back to the campaign of last year. You had Trump supporters wearing hats that said "Make America Great Again." We're getting beaten over their heads. They lit up a limousine during inauguration, and that was ablaze. That happened to be owned by a Muslim, interestingly enough. And I think this report, and also the report about the Antifa guys on the way to Charlottesville that was given to the Virginia government, this completely vindicates what Donald Trump said, that both sides were to blame. In Charlottesville, you had neo-Nazis on one side, neo-communists on the other. It was perfectly appropriate to condemn both sides, and both sides were responsible for the violence down there.
Doug, doesn't DeRoy make a good point, and that is that these reports seem to actually bolster President Trump's insistence that extremists on the left bear some blame for clashes that are occurring in our society now?
Look, these people are not Democrats. They are extremists. I want to be clear that neo-Nazism is very different from what you call neo-communism. But that being said, these people are outside the mainstream. They are promoting and provoking violence. And I, as a mainstream Democrat, distance myself from them, first and foremost.
Well, okay, so you did. So the Antifa is not Democrat, but the alt-right is Republican. Is that fair, DeRoy?
No, I don't think it is fair. I mean, I've been a member of the conservative and free market movement since 1979. I have nothing in common with the so-called alt-right, the neo-Nazis, and so on. And I think it's absolutely appropriate to denounce them as the racist and violent people that they are. But we also have the Antifa people out there, or people on the strong left and hard left, who are out there doing things like clocking people over the heads with bicycle locks inside of socks, and beating people. You saw just in Boston last week, and in Berkeley, elsewhere, beating people up, knocking people over the heads with sticks. They actually hold shields that say "No hate" while they're pounding people in people's faces in. People walk around with blood coming out of their foreheads after they encounter these people. These are like Hitler's brown shirts in the 1920s, who would attack their political opponents on the streets of Berlin until they bled. And now we're seeing it all over again on the part of Antifa and the far left.
Doug, doesn't it bother you that as we see this activity, starting with, as I recall, Berkeley, and I remember I called them black ninjas because nobody told me about Antifa, and, you know, they're trying to burn down the building, breaking windows, beating people up. 12 hours of rioting, one person arrested only because he insisted on being arrested for his street creds. Why are the police standing down?
Look, I think you have to talk to the police in individual jurisdictions. To my way of thinking, anyone who engages in this kind of violence on the left or the right deserves to be prosecuted if they break the law. And DeRoy makes some good points. I just want to reiterate that they are not brown shirts. They're people who are outside the system. They're bad people. They're not
Americans.
Democrats, but they're not Nazis.
They're
period.
Americans, and you know what? They're more left than they are right. We ought to at least be honest about what the agenda is that they're
I'm absolutely
promoting.
clear on that, Jeanine. They're more left than right, and they're completely people who I dissociate myself from.
Oh, good.
Let's be clear. I'm the loyal opposition.
Associated with the white supremacists.
Right.
So there.
I'm glad Doug did that.
Seconds.
And Nancy Pelosi denounced them. I think every Democrat ought to separate themselves from these
Coming
awful,
up, more Hannity after the break. Sorry, guys. Stay with us.